And we're back with War Room veteran and post-media columnist Warren Kinsella at an airport somewhere in the southern hemisphere.
This is the Kingston, Jamaica airport, and I'm over in a corner so I don't disturb any of the nice people waiting for their plane. So my partner and I are waiting for an Air Canada plane, Charles, so we should be here for several days. So
Well, by the time people see and hear this, hopefully you'll be back on terra firma in Canada,
hopefully.
which in my opinion is not broken. But we can talk about that some other time. One of the pieces of breaking commentary this week everybody was talking about was your piece, and this had to do with your prediction that Justin Trudeau would leave. Now, you've made that prediction before. It was a different kind of prediction. It was a little more textured this time. And it also warned conservatives not to be thrilled with the idea of Justin Trudeau leaving before the next election. What's your take, Warren?
What I did, I mean, my gut has always served me better in politics, Charles, than polling. You know, polls, they're a snapshot and then they're gone. My gut had been telling me for a long time, for sure, the Conservatives are way ahead. Abacus yesterday, for the first time, said that they're ahead by 20 points. That's a lot. Gerald Bricker said yesterday they may be, it's about 15% is what he figures the difference is. That's a lot. But I just did not detect a huge amount of enthusiasm for Pierre Poilievre. It seemed to me to be an anti-Trudeau thing. So I did something completely unscientific, no weighted sample, no random sampling, none of that stuff. I just put it up on X. And I said to the Conservatives who follow me, I said, okay, boys and girls, you have an option. Is your vote anti-Trudeau, number one? Is it pro-Pierre, number two? Is it, number three, kind of both, but more anti-Justin? Or number four, is it both, but more pro-Pierre? So anti-Justin, pro-Pierre, both, but more anti-Justin, both, and pro-Pierre. Well, guess what I found? And it's like 4,000 votes so far. And again, it's not scientific. It was just for a bit of fun to confirm my gut, and my gut was confirmed. Overwhelmingly, Charles, the Conservative vote is an anti-Trudeau vote. Overwhelmingly. Like, if they're asked if they are voting Conservative because of Pierre Poilievre, the answer is, for the vast majority of them, no, they're not. Now, in fairness to the guy, when you're an opposition leader, you're just not as well known as the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, is on TV all the time and in the papers, so people feel they know him or her. But in this case, there's a real lack of enthusiasm, even among Conservatives, for Pierre Poilievre. And that's a big problem for him if something happens, which is if Justin Trudeau leaves.
So Pierre Poilievre has had a lot of exposure on social media, certainly. And isn't it fair to say, I'm just trying to bend over backwards, be fair, nobody thinks that I'm a fan of Pierre Poilievre, but isn't it fair to say that what we're looking at here is, while many people who have had exposure to Pierre Poilievre aren't impressed with him, but they feel change is much more important and they'd rather vote for change than for Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, as you and I have talked about many times over the years, not just about this Prime Minister, but previous ones, in this business, in the politics business, you get about 8 years. That's it. And you're tapped out. And, it's nothing personal. It's just the people kind of get sick of your face. That's why the Americans, I think, have, that 2-term limit for presidents. It actually probably has spared the political life of a lot of presidents. After about 8 years, you're done like dinner. The last guy who was able to pull it into 3 terms was my guy, Jean Chrétien. Before that, Mackenzie King. Before that, Wilfrid Laurier. It's really hard to do. So, I don't think Trudeau or his supporters should feel badly that he's unpopular. He's been there for 8 years. But what's fascinating is they're not rushing to the Tory option because of who their leader is. They're rushing to the Tory option because they would like to see Justin go.
Did it help your guy, Jean Chrétien, that the Conservatives were broken up into several pieces when he got that third majority?
Uh, it didn't hurt. But, the point I always make to people is, well, those of us on the progressive side, our vote was broken up too, with an established, very respectable party in the form of the NDP. We always had to compete with them for votes on the center and the left. So, everybody has this challenge. But yeah, when the Conservative Party blew to bits in '93, with some of it going off to be Lucien Bouchard's Bloc Québécois and some of it going off to be Preston Manning's Reform Party, yeah, we benefited from that, but we still had to contend with the Green Party and the NDP.
All right. I don't want to argue too much about history. Everyone has different circumstances. My guess is if the Conservative Party was split into two right now, let's say it was the Progressive Conservatives and the Alliance, like the days before Harper and McKay cut the cake, my guess is the polls would still say that Trudeau is behind. But I doubt that he'd be behind by 15 or 20 points. He'd
Yeah,
be
no,
behind.
you're absolutely right. I mean, look what happened in Alberta. Danielle Smith is a disaster, in my opinion. She's the worst premier in Alberta's history, but she won a majority because, the two warring factions of the conservative movement in Alberta came together. Same thing in British Columbia. You got the Conservatives and the United folks warring it out for that side of the vote proposition, and the NDP is way ahead as a result. So yes, for sure, it is a factor. But I would say, here there is a holdback about Pierre Poilievre, and I don't know if it's the angry stuff. I don't know if it's because they don't know him yet, but there's a holdback.
Well, I can, I mean, for what it's worth, I'll give you my gut. I mean, he's just not a very likable character. He just does a whole lot of things that aren't very prime ministerial. I mean, recently he just, for instance, you had an NDP guy retiring after 20 years, Charlie Angus. I mean, I get that he's been a thorn in the Tory side forever, but instead of Pierre Poilievre just wishing him good luck or saying nothing at all, he, came out with the talking points about how Charlie Angus, who is a hunter, wants to take rifles away from hunters in northern Ontario, and there's something. Anyway, it was just one of these talking point things that a 9-year-old could write, and for some reason, Poilievre decided to do that. It's just one of many things that he does that just doesn't appear to be prime ministerial. When he's munching the apple, talking to a no-name lightweight a journalist somewhere in a Kelowna orchard, and the Conservatives absolutely ate up the apple, ate up the act. But for a lot of people, that too is not prime ministerial.
No,
nothing
for sure.
nothing your guy Jean Chrétien would have done.
No, and Shannon Proudfoot, who's to me is one of the best political columnists in the country, wrote about what you just described in the Globe and Mail. I encourage everybody to go take a look at it. I was pretty mad at Angus has got a punk rock past like me, so I've always liked that about him. I haven't liked his position on Israel lately, but he's leaving, like he's gone. So, what's wrong with saying something nice? That is the tradition in politics. You duke it out, but when the game's over, everybody takes their jerseys off and they all have a beer together. That's what I grew up with in, at Chrétien's knee. And like Poilievre does have this different angry approach. You see it with Trump, you see it with the MAGA people, where they're just pissed off all the time. And like, for sure, it's working right now because a lot of people are pissed off right now for all kinds of different reasons. But when they stop to being pissed off, because you can't sustain anger as a political commodity for a long period of time. I guarantee it. It is not something you can turn into a lifestyle. And these guys, sooner or later, they're going to find voters saying, well, Pierre, can't you say something positive? Can't you come up with an idea of your own? Why are you against everything all the time? You and I have heard that said about past angry opposition leaders, and I could see it coming for this guy. And it'll be particularly a problem, getting back to what we were talking about a minute ago, if Justin leaves. Like, it's a whole new ball game. I went through the history of it, with Turner. When Turner became Liberal leader, he was way ahead of Mulroney for months. When Chrétien became Liberal leader, he was way ahead of Mulroney for months. Like Harper, etc. Whenever you get a new leader, they get a honeymoon. In some cases, studies have shown the honeymoons can last as years. Well, in Chrétien's case, it lasted for 10 years. but like it can last for a year, it can last for 6 months. So this is the great danger. I've said to my conservative friends, like, you guys are putting all your eggs in the Justin Trudeau basket. What if he plays rope-a-dope with you and he disappears sometime in the next few months? Like, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
Warren Kinsella, expectations are everything in politics. The first debate, and I'm making the assumption that Justin Trudeau is staying, so just humor me for a while. I mean, he is there right now. He says he's staying, so I'm just going to go with the idea that he's staying to introduce this proposition, and that is expectations. If expectations are high before the campaign begins, that Pierre Poilievre will not only win, but he'll win a landslide. What happens in that all-important first debate that happens to be in French? Despite the fact that it's in French, it does get coverage, and people do make judgments. Columnists, pundits, others make judgments on how Poilievre did against Justin Trudeau, and that can alter expectations. Do you think there's a lick of a chance that Pierre Poilievre in French, and I realize he speaks French, but do you think there's any chance at all that Pierre Poilievre will best Justin Trudeau on the debate stage in Quebec?
No, no. If Champagne, if Frankie Bubbles, who's my favorite Liberal candidate for the leadership, he'll kick Poilievre's ass too, right? Because, French, in fairness to the guy, is not his first language. And it's a problem for Poilievre because right now, the one province where he's behind, if you look at all these pollsters, is in the province of Quebec. The Liberal Party is still competitive in the province of Quebec and is going to maintain a presence there after the next election. So yeah, but it's not just a language thing. Quebecers, you and I have both lived in Quebec. I was born in Quebec. Quebecers have pretty good political antenna, and they tend to favor those who are on the progressive side of the spectrum. And I know conservatives at this moment are saying, yeah, but they voted overwhelmingly for Mulroney. And it's like, well, yeah, Mulroney was a progressive conservative. Like, he could have run as a liberal easily. So, the style of Poilievre's politics, as well as the ideology of his politics, is a problem for him in the province of Quebec. And the Liberals are still going to win lots of seats in Metro Toronto as well. So, this thing ain't over until it's over.
So what happens to the expectations game when Trudeau kicks Poilievre's ass in French, and it's not just about the French? There'll be several points that Trudeau will make that will make the sloganeering Poilievre look a little bit on the petite, on the small side. Don't you think that affects expectations in the course of the campaign and affects campaign dynamics?
Well, for sure. And, guys like you and me, what do? We come down from the hills and we shoot the wounded. And that's exactly what we're going to do. As soon as he stumbles in a debate, because they've raised expectations so friggin' high for this guy, right? It's like the sun shines out of his ass for most of them. And it's like, guys, like, he's not Jesus. Like, he's just a man. And like, when he stumbles, as we all do, and he, stumbles in a debate, guys like you and me are going to be on him like a pack of dogs. So yeah, it's going to be, but that's what makes it so much fun. That's why it's so much fun writing about politics and talking about it.
But just when they talk these days about how he's got a majority, it's a shoo-in. Sometimes I say I'm either too old or I'm just too experienced. I've seen this game before, and peaking early is bad news. Go ahead.
One word: Juggernaut.
Yes.
Remember Susan Delacourte's book Juggernaut? How Paul Martin was going to win almost exactly the same number of seats, 225 seats. Yeah. Well, guess what? He didn't. Sorry, Susan, you're wrong. And you'll be wrong forever. It's really, as my colleague Brian Lilly says all the time, Brian well, he says, like, he just refuses to accept that it's going to be like this. He said, voters are fickle, campaigns matter. Voters change their minds. And so that is almost certainly what's going to happen. And I still believe that Justin is not a dummy. He's seen the polls like the rest of us, and he's like, it's time for me to move on. I've had my 8 years as prime minister, 10 years as Liberal leader. It's time for me to go and do some other stuff.
But one of the reasons I've got a problem with this whole Poilievre gets an overwhelming majority, I have literally walked or driven every single kilometer in 905 area code in the suburbs of Toronto. I know those folks like the back of my hand. the idea that all of them will go from red to blue in one election cycle, and that the blue will be Pierre Poilievre, I'm sorry, I'd have to lose everything that I know about life, the human condition, and my friends and neighbors in that part of the world to think that'll happen.
Yeah, no, the category he needs is the most powerful force in modern politics, which is the suburban moms, right? Suburban women. And they have eluded the Conservative Party's grasp since Mulroney, really. Harper, benefited from the split on the left by the NDP doing very well. But, you're absolutely right. Right now, the polls say that Poilievre is doing better with women than he previously did. But previously, he was in big trouble with suburban women. So that's what I'm watching for, to see what they do.
Well, as you know, social programs matter. And when Trudeau and anybody else in Liberal Party messaging really puts in front of the suburban women the idea that Poilievre would slash, childcare, dental care, all of the other social programs. And of course, he's not going to say that he will. He's not going to say that he won't. But in a debate, body language, I think I want you to talk about this a little bit, because debates do matter in a situation like this. Body language matters much more than rhetorical language. What will the body language be on Pierre Poilievre when Pierre Trudeau's son, Justin, puts it to the public and puts it to Poilievre's face that we know, everyone knows, that you will slash daycare, you will slash those social programs? What will Poilievre's body language say?
Well, the body language is super important in debates. I've gotten prime ministers and premiers ready for debates that they've done well in. The thing I learned, this is not a political thing, it's a journalism thing. I learned from the great George Freycor at Carleton University. TV is pictures. That's what he'd say to us over and over again. TV is pictures. TV is pictures. It's an emotional medium. It's not a rational medium. And, how you look, Gordon Campbell in BC once said to me, I said he'd done well in the debate. He said, no, I didn't. And I said, well, why not? And he said, Warren, it's 70% how you look, it's 20% how you sound, and it's 10% what you say. And of course, he's right. If you're too hot for TV, if you're too hot for the medium, as the great Canadian Marshall McLuhan said, you turn people off. And that is a challenge that Poilievre's got, is unlike Justin, Justin was a drama teacher, big deal. So is Zelensky. Zelensky's the most popular politician in the world because he knows how to work a camera. Justin knows how to work a camera as well. He's quite good at it. And Poilievre, I'll give him some credit. He's trying. He's smiling more. He's ditched the glasses. He's trying to look more like the everyman. But the TV, the TV camera, like I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, it's the truth teller. People feel they have an ability to look at the images that are on their screen and see if that person is telling the truth, right? That's the political reality of leaders' debates. And, the optics of Pierre are better than they used to be, but his optics are not as good as Trudeau's.
So when Justin Trudeau says, Mr. Poilievre, you keep talking about axing the tax, but you don't care about the tax. You care about childcare. You want to axe childcare, don't you? Now, Pierre Poilievre, when he hears that, will either look angry, because that's his default position, or he'll look cold, which is his other position, angry and cold. Which one of those positions appeals to suburban moms on that question?
No, you got to look, this is why liberals and progressives and Democrats are better on social programs. Conservatives are better on economics for sure, and taxes and law and order. But, the one thing I've learned in getting people ready for debates is I'd have answers for my guys on taxes and law and order and so on. But they're never going to be as convincing as the conservative is. By the same token, a conservative who spends all his time talking about social programs is just not going to be as convincing as us, because people don't believe they want to preserve social programs. Like, you remember Stockwell Day in 2000, I put together a commercial of the Calgary General Hospital being blown up when he was treasurer in the province of Alberta. And it was dramatic TV. It was a dramatic commercial. Why did I do that? Well, firstly, my dad used to work there. That was where his laboratory was. So it was kind of personal. But, it showed that under these guys, they're going to blow up, healthcare, like quite literally. And we ran that. Day took the bait. He stood up in the debate, held up a sign saying no two-tier healthcare. Remember when he did that?
Yeah.
And he could not be convincing because it's our issue. Charles, I'm sorry. They're boarding my plane. I just got notice.
That's all right. Get your carcass back to Canada, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, buddy.